Hey guys, tonight we journey back to a time when central heating didn't exist, the wolves weren't metaphorical, and surviving winter meant more than wearing 2 pairs of socks. You've just arrived in a medieval village, somewhere in 14th century Europe. Snow has started falling again, lazily at first, but the wind cuts straight through your cloak like it has personal beef with you. The mud beneath your shoes is frozen stiff, but somehow still manages to suck at your feet as you trudge forward. It's late, almost dark, and smoke spirals upward from the slanted thatch roofs around you, curling into the gray sky like fingers waving you inside. The cold isn't just a temperature, it's a full-body assault. It's in your bones, in your teeth, in that one spot between your shoulder blades you didn't know existed until it went numb. The air smells like damp wood, soot, and something vaguely animal. Everything's wet, even the snow. And here's your medieval reality check. Without serious preparation, you probably wouldn't make it through the week. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is, because trust me, it's always winter somewhere. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You squint through the swirling snow and spot your destination, a squat, timber-framed hut, patched with wattle and daub and crowned with a roof that sags a little in the middle. It's not glamorous, but it's home. For now. As you push open the wooden door, a small gust of warmth greets you, not exactly inviting but at least less hostile than the wind outside. The inside is dark, soot-stained walls, a low ceiling you'll hit your head on at least 3 times tonight, and a hearth in the center doing its best to pretend it's a fireplace. There's no chimney, just a smoke hole in the roof that mostly works if the wind is kind. Spoiler, the wind is rarely kind. A scrawny dog lifts its head and lazily flops its tail once. Someone mumbles from under a mound of furs in the corner. Welcome home, peasant. The smell inside is layered. A cozy mix of damp wool, old cabbage, and wood smoke, accented with undertones of someone hasn't bathed in weeks, which is true. Most peasants in winter went weeks, if not months, without a full wash. Not because they liked being smelly, but because standing naked in freezing air was a bold strategy for someone trying to survive. You take off your outer cloak, stiff with frost at the edges, and hang it near the fire to dry. It won't. Not really. But it might thaw just enough to not slice your ears open tomorrow morning. Your fingers are red and raw. You rub them together while staring at the flickering flames. Fire is life here. The hearth is your kitchen, your heater, your light source, your status symbol, and your gossip corner. Now, here's a mainstream fact. Most medieval peasant homes had a central hearth without a chimney. Smoke filtered out slowly through the roof, and yes, it stung your eyes constantly. The ceiling beams above are black with years of accumulated soot. But that smoke, as annoying as it is, helps kill lice and drive off insects. Silver linings, right? You check the wooden shutters on the single window. No glass, of course. Just thick oiled cloth or horn if you're lucky. A few stray snowflakes still sneak in through the gaps. You shove a bit of moss into the worst crack and pretend it helps. Spoiler, it doesn't. Outside, the wind howls again. That weird, hollow kind of howl that makes you feel like you're being watched by something older than wolves. You try not to think about it. The dog whines softly. Just the wind, probably. You look around and count the things that pass for furniture. One bench. A table that slouches like it owes someone money. A chest that holds both your clothes and, occasionally, your cousin. And in the corner, a wooden cradle with a baby wrapped up like a badly packed burrito. Someone once said medieval peasants didn't own much, but they sure owned everything they needed to survive. And they knew how to stretch every item. That bench? It's also a bed, a storage box, and a weapon if someone annoys you during dinner. Outside, the other huts flicker with orange light through their cracks. You remember how villages were often built around a central green or church, both as a social hub and a defense point. But your little cottage sits on the edge. Not exactly VIP placement. Probably because your family breeds goats. And goats, as it turns out, are very vocal at night. You know this firsthand. The goat in question is currently chewing something in the corner of your house. Yes, asterisk and asterisk the house. During the harshest weeks, families brought small livestock indoors to share heat. Cows, chickens, goats. Basically roommates. Historians still argue whether this was out of necessity, superstition, or just sheer attachment to their animals. Either way, it makes bedtime aromatic. You sit close to the hearth and pull your legs up to your chest. You're still cold, but not panicking cold. Not I can't feel my toes cold, just the regular kind. The kind that hums in your bones like an annoying relative who won't take a hint. Someone hands you a bowl of something hot and gray. You don't ask, you just eat it. Hunger makes everything taste like hope. As the night deepens, the snow outside muffles all sound. It's like someone laid a thick, white blanket over the entire world. You feel the walls creak gently as the wind changes direction. The fire crackles, and from somewhere deep in the woods you swear you hear bells. Just faint ones. Maybe a traveler. Maybe not. You close your eyes, letting your shoulders sag. You've made it through another day. You're warm, asterisk-ish star. You're full, asterisk sort of star. And you're alive, asterisk still star. The fire spits a little as it settles into its nighttime rhythm, and the last ember of twilight disappears behind the shuttered window. You rise stiffly, stepping carefully over the dog and the goat, both now asleep and emitting competing smells, and make your way toward the back of the hut. This is your sanctuary, such as it is. The hut you call home is not much, but it's cleverly built to survive winters that could easily swallow the unprepared. The walls are made of timber posts with woven wattle panels, coated in layers of daub, usually mud, straw, and animal dung. Glamorous, no. Effective, yes. The thick mix forms a rudimentary insulation, helping trap any heat your feeble fire manages to create. It's not exactly draft-proof though. Cold still snakes through the gaps, licking at your ankles and poking the back of your neck like a mischievous ghost. You touch the wall and feel its chill seep into your fingertips. Historians still argue whether medieval huts were ever truly warm by our standards. Most agree they weren't, but warmth wasn't measured in degrees. It was measured in survival. The roof slopes low over your head. Thatched from bundles of straw or reeds, it's both your best friend and your eternal nemesis. In theory, it keeps rain and snow out. In practice, it leaks, nests birds, and occasionally drops bugs directly onto your blanket. Still, thatch has remarkable insulating power when it's dry. When it's not dry, well, remember to sleep on the side farthest from the drip. The single-room design is deliberate. No hallways, no private quarters. Just one shared space where every breath, every body, every coal contributes to the fight against the cold. And yes, that includes your grandmother snoring under 4 layers of wool in the corner. She's like a space heater with stories. The hearth sits at the center not just physically but spiritually. Everything radiates outward from it. Your meals, your light, your warmth, your arguments. It's the heart of the house. Even when the fire dies down to a dull red, you can still feel its presence, like the low purr of a sleeping cat. Only this cat will let you freeze to death if you ignore it. A clever peasant, like yourself, uses every trick available to hold in the heat. Thick rush mats line the dirt floor, keeping bare feet off the icy ground. Animal hides are nailed over the door to block the breeze. And in truly brutal winters, a few families even build sleeping platforms above ground level, where rising warm air pools like lazy mist. You look up toward the rafters. Dangling from hooks and beams are dried herbs, slabs of bacon, and onions strung like beads. Nothing is wasted. Every surface has a purpose. And high spaces, those that catch and hold heat, are precious real estate. You once tried to sleep in the rafters as a child. Fell out. Broke a bench. Got soup duty for a week. The central hearth lacks a chimney, of course. Instead, smoke snakes upward through a hole in the roof, sometimes if the wind feels generous. Usually, though, it curls back down like a mischievous ghost, stinging your eyes and settling in your lungs. You cough. Everyone coughs. It's just how things are. Here's a quirky historical tidbit for you. Some peasants used to plug cracks in the walls with chewed bread. Yep, good old soggy carbs pressed into service as medieval caulk. Not particularly long-lasting, but when the wind howls and you've run out of moss or mud, you make do. You lie back on the bench bed and let your hand rest against the wooden post beside you. It's rough, splintered, and permanently cold. Wood doesn't hold heat like stone, but it's easier to build with. And more forgiving if you smack your head on it during a midnight trip to the chamber pot, or more accurately, the bucket in the corner. Medieval peasant homes weren't all uniform. The structure around you might be slightly different in Italy than it would be in Denmark. Stone was common in parts of the British Isles, but wood and mud ruled in Central Europe. Climate, access to materials, and local tradition shaped the architecture more than any royal decree. Still, the principles were similar. Small rooms, low ceilings, thick walls, and everything arranged around that fire. Heat doesn't travel far, so neither do you. The idea of having a separate bedroom is laughable. The idea of privacy? Even funnier. You share the space with your immediate family, and sometimes their immediate families. Grandparents, cousins, a widow from across the lane whose roof collapsed last frost, and her dog, Somehow always the dog. At night, you all huddle together under wool blankets, hay mattresses, and anything else remotely soft. Sleeping next to each other isn't just cozy, it's essential. Body heat is more valuable than silver in the dead of winter. People slept curled up like commas, tucked into each other like nesting spoons, with children and babies nestled in the center, farthest from the cold walls. You shift on your bench, tugging your cloak around you tighter. The wind outside picks up again, rattling the shutters like a drunk trying to get in. The fire sputters. You throw on another log, carefully hoarded because firewood is precious and gathering it means hours in the frozen forest, dodging wolves and worse, angry lords who claim the woods as their own. Sometimes you hear about cruck houses, a term for homes built with curved wooden beams forming an A-frame roof. You think old Jacob down the lane lives in one. The beams in those houses are often left exposed inside, adding a kind of accidental charm that modern Instagrammers would kill for. But Jacob's house is still just as smoky, just as cold, and just as damp as yours. You stretch your legs and listen to the crackle of the fire. The goat shifts in her sleep. The baby burbles. And for a moment, the hut feels like a fortress. Not from danger, but from the cold, the dark, the long stretch of winter that waits outside. The walls might not be strong, but the life inside them holds something tougher. The will to make it through one more night. You wake to the sound of nothing, and that's the most unnerving part. No fire crackling, no rooster crowing, no faint footsteps crunching outside. Just that thick, muffled quiet of deep winter. Your breath fogs in the air as you sit up slowly, joints creaking like old hinges. A quick glance confirms what you feared. The fire's gone out. Again. You slip from under your shared blanket pile, careful not to wake the others. Your feet hit the dirt floor with a jolt, ice cold, as if it's reaching up to remind you who's really in charge here. You shuffle toward the hearth and poke at the ashes, hoping for a stubborn ember. Nothing. You sigh. Time to start over. Fire starting in winter isn't just a task, it's an ordeal. You grab a flint and steel, crouch low, and begin striking. Sparks fly, land on the dry moss and straw, and fizzle out with all the enthusiasm of a wet sponge. Your fingers are stiff, your nose is already running, and your stomach growls before you even get the first curl of smoke. Peasant life doesn't offer snooze buttons. Eventually the flame catches. You blow on it like it's your one true love. It flares, dances, and starts licking the kindling. Relief washes over you like warmth itself. You add a bigger log, then another, until the familiar pop and hiss of burning wood fills the space. The hearth has come back to life, and now so can everything else. Fire isn't just warmth, it's time. Without clocks, peasants judged the rhythm of the day by chores and firelight. The morning started when the fire was stoked, not when the sun rose. Especially in winter, when days are short and the sky refuses to commit to any specific color. You reach for the iron pot that hangs on its hook and pour in yesterday's water, collected in a barrel out back. Hopefully it didn't freeze solid. If it did, you'll have to chip it out like ice from a cake. Luckily today you're spared. The water sloshes in, cold but liquid. A minor miracle. As you prepare the morning gruel, oats and maybe a few wrinkled dried berries, you notice the baby stirring. Then the rest of the household follows like a medieval wave. Stretching, coughing, scratching. Everyone wears at least 2 layers, and most of those haven't been washed since the leaves fell. Here's a mainstream fact to warm your cold little heart. Medieval peasants usually wore linen underclothes and wool overclothes, layering for warmth. Linen was cool in summer but useless in winter without wool's insulating magic. And since clothes were expensive and often handmade, people typically owned only one full outfit at a time. You didn't change daily. You didn't even change weekly. A bowl of gruel in hand, you squat near the fire and try to eat slowly. It's hot and that's all that matters. Taste? Not a priority. But energy? You'll need it. Outside, the snow hasn't stopped. It's piled high against the door, heavy and wet. You push it open with your shoulder, and a wall of white greets you like a particularly aggressive sheep. You squint, stepping out into a world reduced to grayscale. Everything is blanketed. Still, silent. The snow crunches underfoot as you start your morning tasks. First, animals. They're depending on you even if they show their gratitude by biting or pooping in your general direction. You trudge to the lean-to where the chickens are roosting. It's not much more than a glorified wooden box with straw, but it keeps them alive. You toss and feed, scraps and seed, and collect whatever eggs the frost hasn't claimed. Eggs are precious in winter. Protein and fat in a tiny, self-contained miracle. If the hens don't go broody from the cold, you might even get a few more by week's end. Next, the goat. She greets you with a bleat that sounds eerily like passive aggression. You pat her flank, check her hooves, and milk her into a clay cup. It's not much, thin and warm, but it'll mix nicely with your gruel tomorrow. And now the latrine. It's a small, sad structure at the edge of the yard, mostly used during daylight. But in winter? It's a negotiation. Do you risk the frostbite or do you use the night bucket? You know the answer. You've been emptying night buckets since you were 5. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some medieval peasants used communal latrines, especially in larger villages. And in parts of northern Europe, people even shared facilities with animals, not for bonding but for shared body heat. It's the least glamorous buddy system in history. Back inside, your boots are soaked. You peel them off and lay them near the fire to dry. Again, they'll steam. They'll smell. They'll still be cold tomorrow. But you'll wear them anyway, because toes are kind of important. You glance at the ceiling and notice frost creeping along the inside of the roof beams. Yep, asterisk inside star. Condensation from the fire and breath freezes on contact with the cold wood. You flick a bit of ice off the edge and watch it melt in your palm. You've stopped being surprised by what freezes anymore. Your sister starts spinning wool in the corner, her fingers red but nimble. Your brother patches a net. Your grandmother is muttering into a bowl, probably casting judgment or possibly seasoning stew. Medieval life doesn't pause for winter, it adapts. You just do everything slower, closer to the fire, and while wearing everything you own. Historians still argue whether peasants had leisure time. But in winter, when fields lie dormant, you do get brief windows between survival tasks. Spinning, mending, storytelling. Not rest exactly, but a change of pace. You sit near the fire and help twist some flax. The rhythm is soothing. The flames flicker. And for a while, the cold feels manageable. Not gone, but held at bay by the living pulse of the house, the tasks and the tiny victories of warmth scraped together one log at a time. By midday, the sun hangs somewhere behind the clouds like a lazy coin stuck in gray porridge. It's still bitterly cold outside, but inside your hut, the air has thickened with smoke, sweat, and the bubbling of a weak onion stew. The fire's been coaxed back to life twice already. You poke at it with a stick, watching the flames dance and feeling a little proud. Your fire hasn't gone out once today. You might as well be a wizard. But keeping warm doesn't stop at home. You've got chores, obligations, and the nagging sense that someone else's cow is wandering too close to your property. So you layer up, wool over linen, maybe a second tunic if you're lucky, and pull on your hood. Scarves aren't a thing yet, but wrapping a bit of cloth around your face does the trick. You step outside and the wind slaps you like it's got something to prove. There's no road, just a path trampled by boots and hooves. Snow creaks beneath your feet as you head toward the fields. You don't expect to do much, not with the ground frozen solid. But you've got to check the fences, see if the storm knocked anything down, and make sure no one's borrowed your firewood pile again. Looking at you, neighbor Heinrich. Snow drifts reach your knees in some spots, and you make your way slowly, sticking to the familiar dips and grooves of the land. Even now, the land is everything. It feeds you, shelters you, and betrays you in equal measure. In winter, it mostly just dares you to survive. Here's your mainstream fact of the day. In medieval Europe, open field farming dominated peasant life. Fields were divided into long, narrow strips, each family tending several scattered plots. You'd think it would be more efficient to keep them together. But this system spread the risk. Bad soil in one area might be balanced by better yields elsewhere. Unless it was winter, of course. Then everything was just equally frozen and useless. You reach the edge of your strip, marked with a crude wooden stake and a bit of twine. It's covered in snow now, but you can picture the rows of barley, the wheat stubble from last harvest. You scuff a bit of snow with your foot. The earth underneath is like stone. You nod to yourself and turn back. Nothing to be done here. Not until spring. On the way home, you stop by the communal well. The water inside hasn't frozen, yet, thanks to its depth. But the bucket rope creaks, stiff with ice. You pull anyway, slow, hand over hand. Your arms burn a little and the cold bites into your palms, but when the bucket crests the lip of the well, it's like raising a treasure chest. Clean water, liquid gold. As you pass through the village, you see other peasants doing the same, hauling wood, checking livestock, dragging bundles of twigs wrapped in twine. Everyone wrapped in wool and worry. Someone's child is crying nearby. Someone else is singing a lullaby just off key. Life doesn't stop, it just gets quieter, slower, grittier. You pause outside a neighbor's hut, one of the nicer ones with a bit of carved trim around the door and glass in the window. Actual glass. Luxury. The family inside might have more goats than you. Maybe they did well last harvest. Or maybe they know someone who isn't afraid to take things. You don't envy them much. But as you trudge home, you do wonder, what would it take to build something warmer, better? Historians still argue whether medieval peasants had the means, or the desire, to improve their homes long-term. Was it practicality that kept things simple, or were peasants trapped by cost, custom, and the approval of the local lord? Probably all of the above. You stop again at your woodshed, really just a slanted stack of logs barely protected by planks, and grab a few more for the evening. The logs are damp. They always are. No matter how early you cut and stack them, they find a way to soak up moisture. You sigh. They'll smoke. The whole hut will reek. Again. But it's still better than freezing. Back inside, the stew is ready, or as ready as boiled onions and turnip skins get. Your sister ladles it into bowls made of carved wood, worn smooth from years of use. You sit, steaming bowl in hand, and let it warm your fingers before your stomach. It's thin, watery, and desperately needs salt. But it's hot. That's enough. You share the meal in silence mostly, broken occasionally by slurps, sniffs, and the younger kids arguing about who gets the crust of the last loaf. You let them fight it out. It's part of the system. After eating, you help your father repair the door. It's warped slightly from the cold, and snow's been blowing in under the bottom edge. With a bit of scrap cloth and some melted tallow, you fashion a draft stopper of sorts. It smells like old meat and wet dog, but it works. You press your hand to the doorway. No breeze. Just darkness beyond. Here's a strange tidbit. In some parts of medieval Europe, people actually insulated their walls with manure. Packed tightly, it kept the wind out and added a bit of warmth. Yes, it also added a smell. But when your choices are cold or cow poop, you'd be surprised how quickly your standards adjust. As the evening sets in, the shadows inside the hut grow longer. Candles are a luxury, beeswax far too dear for daily use. Instead, you light a rushlight, a strip of dried rush plants soaked in animal fat, jammed into a clay holder. It smokes and sputters, but it throws enough light to see your sewing or patch a hole in your boot. You sit near the hearth and warm your hands again. There's always this constant dance between fire and skin. Too close and you scorch your wool. Too far and your teeth start chattering. You settle for somewhere in the middle. Outside, the wind howls like a hungry dog, but the walls hold. For now. You pull your cloak tighter and watch the shadows flicker across the rafters. It's not warm, not really, but it's survivable. And in winter, survivable is a win. By now the sun has fully retreated, though let's be honest, you barely saw it today anyway. Outside, darkness stretches like tar across the village, seeping into every crack and corner. The wind rattles your shutter, and somewhere in the distance, a dog barks once before thinking better of it. You sit quietly, letting the heat of the fire soak into your knees, your shoulders, your very bones. The stew pot simmers low, reduced now to a brownish sludge that smells better than it tastes. Still, someone will scrape the bottom before bed. Now comes one of the hardest parts of a medieval winter night, deciding what to do with all the hours between sundown and sleep. You don't have TikTok, or books, or even reliable gossip tonight. No one's visited in days. So you default to routine. You help patch your sister's tunic, the one with holes in the elbows. She squints by rushlight, threading a bone needle through wool that's seen 5 winters already. You tease her gently for missing a stitch, and she fires back that at least she's not wearing socks held together with pigget string. Fair point. Here's something many modern folks don't realize. Medieval peasants didn't always sleep in one big, unbroken chunk. In fact, segmented sleep was the norm. 2 shorter periods separated by an hour or 2 of wakefulness in the middle of the night. This in-between time, sometimes called the watch, was used for prayer, quiet work, or occasionally sneaking into someone else's bed. Scandalous? Maybe. But also practical. You and your family aren't quite ready for bed yet, but the hour is creeping in. Your mother begins her nightly ritual, checking the thatch for leaks, setting a pot under the spot near the chimney where condensation always drips, and tucking a wool cloth around the doorframe. These habits have been passed down for generations, not written down, just remembered, done without thinking, like muscle memory for survival. The children, of course, resist sleep with every ounce of energy they've somehow stored all day. They wrestle under the pelts, argue over who gets to sleep furthest from the drafty wall, and complain loudly about the itchy straw mattress. You remember being that age, thinking a cold floorboard was a tragedy. Now you'd sell your soul for one extra fleece blanket. It's all perspective. You lean back, stretching your aching arms. The air smells of wood smoke, damp wool, and the faint, sour tang of old turnips. Not exactly perfume, but strangely comforting. You listen as your father clears his throat and begins to hum, a low, droning tune with no clear melody. It's a working song from his childhood. Probably older than that. Maybe older than time itself. You join in on the second verse, even though you're not sure there is a second verse. Doesn't matter. It's about rhythm. It's about reminding yourselves that you're still here. Historians still argue whether medieval families valued storytelling more in winter due to the long dark hours, or whether oral traditions were simply the norm all year. Either way, tonight your grandfather takes over and begins one of his usual tales, half truth, half fantasy. Something about a knight who tamed a dragon using a song only peasants knew. You roll your eyes but listen anyway. It's familiar. It's warm. It buys you another 20 minutes before you have to crawl into the straw. Eventually, the fire dims to glowing coals. Time to settle in. Your bed is a shared affair, 4 of you lying shoulder to shoulder under a pile of patchwork wool, rabbit pelts, and whatever else could pass for insulation. The mattress isn't really a mattress, it's a wooden frame stuffed with straw, swapped out every few months to keep the lice at bay. Sort of. You try not to think about that part. And now for something odd. In wealthier homes, people sometimes placed hot bricks, wrapped in cloth, near their feet to stay warm. You don't have bricks or cloth to spare, so your little brother gets to be the foot warmer. He complains briefly, then settles in, sighing like he carries the weight of the world on his tiny, freezing shoulders. As you lie there, you feel the chill rising from the floorboards. Even through the straw, even through the wool, it's like sleeping on a slab of ice. But there's warmth from the bodies around you. Shared breath fogs the air. You turn onto your side, curl into a tight ball, and pull the blanket higher. You've learned not to move too much. Any breeze you let in is your own fault. Just before sleep, your thoughts wander. You imagine summer, hot bread, green fields, the sun turning your skin red instead of blue. You imagine a bed with a proper pillow, not a bundled tunic. You imagine silence without the sound of rats in the walls. That last one? Not just imagination. You hear them, tiny feet skittering just above your head in the thatch. One pauses, then resumes its late-night mission, whatever that may be. It's not alarming anymore. Just part of life. Like the creak of the roof beams, or the low snore from your cousin 3 bodies away. And still, sleep doesn't come all at once. Your brain takes its time. It notices the cold spot by your knee, the loose thread tickling your cheek, the cramp in your lower back. You shift slightly. Someone groans in their sleep. Then quiet again. This is winter in a medieval peasant's hut, not a silent night, but a tapestry of quiet sounds and half-warm comforts. A reminder that survival is rarely glamorous and often itchy. Somewhere deep in the night, your eyes open, not with alarm but with that strange alertness your body keeps tucked away for winter. The fire has died down to embers, casting a faint orange blush across the rafters. Beside you, your cousin snores through his nose like a small bagpipe, and the air is cold enough to sting your nostrils with each breath. This is the watch, that odd space between first and second sleep. Everyone wakes, not always together. Not always for long, but it happens as naturally as breathing. You sit up slowly, careful not to jostle the covers too much. Letting in a cold draft now would make you the most hated person in a 6-foot radius. You pull on your cloak and creep over to the fire pit. The embers glow, quiet but alive. You gently nudge a few sticks into place. The crackle is tiny but reassuring. This small fire is all that stands between your family and frostbite some nights. You sip from a clay mug of yesterday's barley water, still slightly warm from being left near the hearth. It tastes like wet bread and old dreams. But it moistens your throat and gives you something to hold as your mind drifts. You wonder, briefly, how many winters you've lived through now. 12? 13? Time is measured in harvests and deaths more than numbers. During this hush, some people pray. Others mend things quietly. You like to just listen. To the way the hut sighs in its joints. The wind coiling itself around the eaves. The rhythmic creak of the beams overhead, a slow heartbeat of wood enduring cold. And yes, even the rat again, your nightly ceiling companion, making its rounds like it owns the place. Here's your historical fact. Segmented sleep wasn't unique to peasants. Across medieval Europe, even nobility practiced this pattern. It was common to wake for an hour or two around midnight, then return to bed. In some monasteries, this gap was filled with chanting or reading scripture. For you? It's filled with silence and the low ache of survival. You remember an old story told by your grandmother, something about frost spirits that crept into houses when the fire went out. She said they pinched your toes, turned your fingers blue, and whispered your name as you slept. You never believed in them, really. But on nights like this, you tuck your hands a little deeper into your sleeves. Just in case. Historians still debate whether such tales were sincere beliefs or just bedtime warnings for squirmy children. Were the frost spirits real to them? Or just something to scare kids into staying under the covers? Hard to say. But when your only insulation is a pile of wool and hope, every bump in the night starts to feel a bit personal. You stir the embers again, and the shadows dance across the hut. Someone stirs behind you. Your mother, maybe. She doesn't speak, just groans softly and shifts under the covers. The rest of the house is asleep except the cat. Yes, even the poorest homes often had cats, not out of love but necessity. Rodents can empty a grain stash faster than winter itself. Your cat, Muse, blinks at you from the corner, then pads over and curls against your foot. She's cold too. Here's your fringe tidbit of the night. In some remote areas of Europe, peasants believed that sleeping near an open hearth could let spirits enter your dreams. This wasn't always seen as bad. Some spirits brought visions of the future or advice for healing the sick. Others brought nonsense, of course. But either way, people often spoke of fire dreams in hushed, reverent tones. You wish for one now. Something strange or vivid. Instead, your mind flits from image to image. Your father's worn boots, the cracked jug on the shelf, the icicle you saw hanging from the eaves like a frozen dagger. You stare into the red glowing coals and imagine them as dragon eyes, barely open, watching you breathe. There's a kind of peace in this moment. Not comfort exactly, but stillness. In a world where daylight means noise, tasks, and toil, this hour feels like it belongs to you. No one's demanding anything. No chores. No arguing. Just breath and bone and fire and wood. Then a cough breaks the silence. The baby. Not yours, thank the saints, but your aunt's. She shifts, cradling him closer, whispering something too soft to hear. The firelight brushes her cheek, and for a second she looks like a carved statue from a chapel. Tired, solid, worn down by love. You pull your cloak tighter and lie back down. Your body groans in protest. The straw pokes through your tunic in all the wrong places, and the blanket's grown colder since you left it. Still, you inch in, reclaim your corner, and press your toes against your little brother's side. He yelps, half asleep, and mutters something about cold rats. You don't correct him. Soon enough, your breathing slows. The second sleep comes more gently, like being pulled underwater. The fire is still glowing, faintly. The cold still waits, politely, beyond the walls. But for now, you drift. Outside, snow begins again. Silent. Relentless. Beautiful if you weren't the one living under it. Morning doesn't so much arrive as sneak in sideways. There's no glorious burst of light or cheerful birdsong. Just a faint graying at the shutter's edge, like the world can't quite commit to daybreak. You blink yourself awake, groggy and stiff. Your back feels like someone stacked turnips on it all night. Someone probably did. That's how close the sleeping arrangement is. The fire's long gone. What's left is a sad little pile of ash and yesterday's heat, clinging to the stones like a memory. Your nose is cold, your breath clouds the air, and you've somehow lost the corner of your blanket. Again. You tug it back and bump your cousin in the process. He groans and rolls away, pulling the blanket with him like a thief. Some battles just aren't worth it. Eventually, your father sits up. His beard is frosted over near the edges, which should be a joke but isn't. He rubs his hands together with a sound like dry leaves and mutters something about the firewood pile. You know what that means. It's your turn today. You groan but don't argue. There's no point. Complaining about chores in a peasant household is like complaining about gravity. It won't change a thing. You pull on your boots, still damp from yesterday, and wrap a length of cloth around your neck. Scarves? Not really a thing. Just strips of old tunics or whatever wasn't too full of holes. You yank the door open and the cold slaps you in the face, hard and immediate. It's not just cold. It's a physical presence. Like air made of knives. You step outside and your boots crunch into the snow with a sound that's far too satisfying given how miserable your toes feel. You trudge toward the woodpile. Or rather, the frozen mountain of logs pretending to be a woodpile. Chopping wood in this weather isn't fun, but it's essential. 1 hour of effort equals 1 night of not freezing. That's the exchange rate. Fair? Absolutely not. But at least it's predictable. Mainstream fact of the day. In many medieval villages, peasant families were required to gather and manage their own fuel sources, be it wood, peat, or even dried animal dung. In regions with heavy deforestation, peat was common. In your case, it's wood, when you can get it. You swing your axe, miss the knot entirely, and nearly take out your shin. You're not awake enough for this. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants spent more energy collecting fuel than food in winter. Some evidence suggests they did. After all, you can skip a meal. You can't skip warmth. You stack what you can carry and haul it back to the house, each log thudding against your back through the sackcloth sling. As you pass the neighbor's hut, you see someone else out, old Marta, chopping with terrifying accuracy. She nods to you, then returns to her work. Her arms look like she could wrestle a bear. Probably has. That woman once threatened a tax collector with a ladle and lived to tell the tale. Back inside, your sister is coaxing life back into the hearth. You hand her a few dry splinters and she arranges them like an artist setting a trap. It takes time, breath, and some muttered curses, but eventually the fire takes hold. A flicker, then a flame, then warmth. It's like lighting hope. Meanwhile, breakfast, if you can call it that, is underway. It's a thick oat porridge, bulked out with crushed chestnuts and a pinch of dried apple. You eat it slowly, not for manners, but because you want it to last. It's the only warm thing you'll put in your body today. The cat watches from a beam above, tail flicking, waiting to pounce if someone drops a crumb. She's not shy. Fringe tidbit. Some rural folk believed cats could see spirits and would sit near chimneys or beams to watch the soul drafts, cold air carrying lost souls. You eye Muse for signs of ghost detection. She yawns. Useless. Once you've scraped the bowl clean, it's time for the daily tally. How much food remains? How much dried meat? Are the turnips rotting yet? Is the cheese sprouting more beard than your uncle? Winter isn't just cold, it's a numbers game. Miscalculate by a week and you starve. That's the simple math of peasant life. You run a mental inventory while cleaning your spoon. The salted fish is down to a single bundle. The onions are hanging in the corner, half gone soft. You've got a few hard loaves left. If you soak them in broth, they're edible. Your mother is already planning how to stretch the rations. She's always planning. That's her superpower. Not magic. The kids argue again. Something about who gets the bigger potato at supper. Your father breaks it up with a look. Not a word, just a look. It's a talent born of long winters and zero patience. You glance out the shutter. The day is gray again. Of course it is. The village is blanketed in snow, the sky is smeared ash color, and there's no promise of sun. But the chores wait. Animals need feeding. Water needs fetching. And you? You'll be heading to the forest edge with your cousin to gather brushwood, knowing full well your toes will go numb by midday. This is survival. Not glamorous, not noble, but quiet, repetitive, brutal in its simplicity. You know your role. You perform it. And then you repeat it tomorrow. But for now, you scrape the last bit of porridge from the pot and lick the spoon clean. The fire crackles. The hut smells like smoke and oats and the faint, lingering scent of damp wool. It's not comfort exactly, but it's enough. You don't get to choose your pace in winter. It chooses you. And right now, the wind is in charge. You wrap your wool cloak tighter around your shoulders, one hand gripping the hem so it doesn't flap open like a barn door. Snowflakes swirl in the air, tiny and vicious, stinging your cheeks as you walk. Your cousin trails behind you, muttering about the injustice of walking all the way to the forest again just for a bundle of brushwood that burns faster than it dries. But brushwood is gold in disguise. It catches fire easily, unlike the chunky logs you chopped earlier. It helps start the flame, which helps cook the porridge, which helps keep your family alive. It's a chain of needs, and every link matters. Besides, your cousin's job is complaining. Yours is keeping your eyes open for wolves. That's not a joke. In deep winter, food becomes scarce not just for you, but for everything with teeth and hunger. Wolves, foxes, even the occasional wild boar. If it moves, it's looking for calories. And you, soft and clumsy in snow boots, look suspiciously like food. You carry a stick not because it'll help, but because swinging it makes you feel braver. You also talk loudly with your cousin, mostly to scare off any animal that thinks you're prey. Or worse, company. Mainstream historical fact. In medieval Europe, entire regions would organize seasonal hunting parties to keep predators like wolves in check. In harsher years, wolves were known to venture into towns, raid livestock, and even attack isolated travelers. There are royal records of bounties offered for every wolf pelt returned, especially during hard winters. Of course, no one's paying you for pelts. You just want to get back with your arms intact and a decent bundle of twigs. You reach the forest edge, where the trees hunch under heavy snow like old men guarding secrets. The quiet here is total. Your boots crunch, breath steams, and every crack of a twig sounds like a gunshot. Your cousin spits into the snow for no good reason and starts gathering wood, snapping branches and stuffing them into his sack. You follow suit. It's work but not hard. The cold does most of the complaining. Your fingers go numb even through your gloves, if you're lucky enough to have gloves. Most of your friends just wrap strips of cloth around their hands. One poor soul in the village uses scraps of rabbit fur, tied with twine. He looks like a failed magician. Your own hands are stiff but they work. You break off slender limbs from dead trees, shake off the snow, and bundle them tight. It's all about friction and pressure. If it crackles, it burns. If it bends, leave it. You learn quickly or you learn cold. Suddenly there's a sound. Not big, but sharp. A rustle. You freeze. Your cousin freezes. Both of you scan the tree line. It's probably a deer. Hopefully a deer. But deer don't often make that snapping noise. You hold your breath. He grips his bundle tighter. You both wait. Nothing moves. Fringe tidbit. Some peasants believed forest spirits protected the trees, especially in winter. Breaking too many branches without offering a gift, a whispered thanks, a strand of hair, even a song, might anger them. You glance at your bundle and mutter a quick apology under your breath. Just in case. You finish gathering, heart still thudding a little too loud for comfort. The way back is faster. Maybe because the wind is now pushing you. Or maybe because fear is a fine motivator. You return to the village just as the sun reaches its weak, noon-like peak. It never really rises this time of year, it just sort of hangs there, pale and unsure of itself. Back at home, your load is met with appreciation, which is rare and therefore valuable. Your mother takes the brushwood, checks its dryness, and nods once. Your little sister hugs your leg. She's 4 and sticky as always. You don't mind. The fire is rekindled and soon there's warmth again. Not much, but enough to sting your cheeks as they thaw. You stand near it for a moment too long before your father grunts and gestures for you to move. Fire space is communal real estate, no squatting. The rest of the afternoon drifts in slow motion. Your mother mends socks. Your uncle scrapes mold off a turnip with the focus of a surgeon. Your grandfather sleeps upright, hat pulled low, occasionally muttering about the price of grain. You and your cousin repair a leaking roof tile using dried moss and desperation. It probably won't work, but it makes you feel useful. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants had free time as we think of it. Some believe winter allowed for more rest since fields lay dormant. Others say the workload simply shifted. Wood gathering, tool repair, animal care, and endless domestic upkeep replaced farming. You fall firmly into the never enough time category. Even so, you steal a moment to breathe. You lean against the hut, watch the smoke rise from nearby chimneys, and smell that odd, comforting scent of snow-damp hay and distant manure. The sky threatens another storm. It's always threatening. Dinner is thin cabbage soup with a slice of black bread. The bread's so hard you could cut ice with it. But you dip it in the broth and pretend it's soft. The trick is chewing with hope. Everyone does it. It's a peasant skill. You eat together, huddled close, bowls balanced on laps, firelight flickering against faces that look far too tired for their age. There's laughter, real, quiet, unexpected, when your cousin spills soup on his tunic and tries to blame the cat. Muse, unimpressed, licks her paw and stares into the fire like she's seen things. Night creeps in early. The shutters are latched. The hearth is fed. You unroll the bedding again, fluff the straw, which really means shaking it once and hoping for no bugs, and collapse next to your cousin. You're sore, chilled to the core, and not entirely sure tomorrow won't be worse. But for now, your belly is full, your hands are warm, and the wolves stayed in the forest. You survived another day. The night presses in like a damp wool blanket, heavy, scratchy, and just a little too close. You stir awake not because of noise, but the absence of it. Everything's still. Not peaceful still. More frozen still. The fire's a dying ember now, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat slowing to rest. The warmth it offered earlier has retreated, leaving only the smoky memory of comfort. You shift under the blanket and bump someone's foot. They groan but don't wake. Your toes curl instinctively. You try not to move too much. Body heat is a group activity. One person shivering alone is just cold. 5 people shivering together? That's central heating. But nature has opinions, and tonight she's feeling dramatic. A sudden gust of wind rattles the thatched roof, sending a sprinkle of dust and straw into your hair. Somewhere in the dark corner of the room, a chicken lets out a surprised cluck. You really meant to move her out weeks ago. You just never got around to it. And honestly, she's warmer than most of your cousins. Eventually, you drift back to sleep. Fitful. Shallow. Every noise seems like a threat. But it's not a wolf this time, it's a different kind of menace. Drip, drip, drip. That unmistakable sound. The roof has started leaking again. You should have patched it better. You knew that moss wasn't dry enough. But what could you do? You were racing the sunset and running low on patience. So now you pay the price. You shuffle your bedding an inch to the left and pretend the drip isn't personal. Come morning, your fingers ache before your eyes even open. Cold fingers are one thing. Cold fingers after a wet night are another. They're stiff, slow, almost wooden. You blow into your palms and sit up, blanket slung over your shoulders like a sleepy Roman senator. The rest of the family is waking too, with a chorus of coughs, groans, and the sound of a younger sibling asking for porridge again. He's ignored. You all know it's barley gruel this morning. Mainstream fact: medieval peasants often survived on barley, rye, and oat-based porridges during the winter months. Wheat was for the wealthy or for special occasions. You've probably never tasted actual white bread in your life. You once saw some at the market. It gleamed like a holy relic. Today is different. Today there's a visit to the village oven. Your house, like most peasant homes, doesn't have its own bread oven. Building and maintaining one takes space and fuel you can't afford. Instead, once or twice a week, villagers gather to bake at a shared communal oven, usually located near the manor or church. It's social. It's smoky. It's hot. And it's one of the few places where peasant life flirts with luxury. You gather your dough, dense, dark, slightly sour from days of fermentation, and wrap it in cloth. Your mother ties the bundle tight, kisses it like she's sending off a child, and hands it to you like it might explode. Bread is no joke. If you drop this, you might not eat next week. Outside, the snow crunches underfoot, but the air has shifted. It's still cold, don't get excited, but the wind has died down, and the clouds have broken just enough for weak sunlight to make an appearance. A miracle. You shield your eyes like some nocturnal creature and make your way toward the oven. You pass neighbors doing the same, old Marta, of course, already there with a basket of 5 loaves and a mean look. A few kids trail behind their mothers, dragging kindling. A pig escapes someone's yard and is quickly recaptured. Life doesn't stop for winter. It just walks slower and curses more. The oven is already warm when you arrive, its stone mouth glowing faintly. The village baker, if you can call him that, wears a soot-stained tunic and has a beard that doubles as an oven brush. He's in charge, which means he yells a lot and burns his hands more than anyone else. You hand him your dough. He pokes it, grunts approvingly, and places it near the back where the heat is strongest. Then you wait. Fringe tidbit: some villagers carved personal symbols or initials into the top of their loaves to tell them apart. Others used different shapes: round, oval, even star-shaped. You scratch a crude fish into yours not because you're religious but because it's easier than a bird. While the bread bakes, you and the others stand around the oven, basking in its heat. It's a rare thing, to feel warm down to your bones. You stretch your fingers toward the stone, close your eyes, and imagine a world where this kind of warmth is normal. Probably doesn't exist. But it's a nice dream. Historians still argue whether communal ovens were tools of cooperation or control. On one hand, they brought villagers together. On the other, lords often taxed their use or controlled access. Some even charged per loaf. You don't worry about that. You just want the smell. And what a smell. It creeps into your clothes, your hair, your soul. Dark bread, toasted crust, a hint of smoke and ash, and maybe, just maybe, a promise of actual satisfaction. You peek in when the baker isn't looking. Your loaf is rising. Barely. But it's trying. Once the bread is done, you wrap it like treasure and hurry home, holding it close to your chest like a newborn. You break the loaf in half before you even reach the door, the steam curling out like a whispered secret. You take a bite. It's chewy, heavy, slightly sour, and tastes like victory. The loaf is sliced and rationed carefully. One piece for now, one for later, one for supper, and a crust set aside for your grandfather, who insists he's not hungry even as he stares at it with watery eyes. You hand it to him anyway. He nods once, and that's thanks enough. That night, you huddle by the fire with a full stomach and crumbs on your shirt. The wind is quieter. The roof doesn't leak. And the bread did its job. You survived again. Still cold. Still tired. But fed. And that, in a medieval winter, is everything. You wake before the sun. Again, not because you're well rested, but because your bladder, your joints, and your family's rooster all conspire against you. The rooster's perched on the rafters indoors. What? Because he nearly froze to death last week. And because chickens don't pay rent, they take liberties. The floor is cold. The air is colder. And outside? Let's not even talk about it. Your breath clouds in front of your face, curling into lazy spirals. The fire's out. Not just dim, out. ash gray and still like it never existed. You'd light it again, but the wood's damp, the kindling's low, and frankly, you're starting to resent fire for being so high maintenance. So what do? You get up anyway. You shuffle to the door. You poke your head out. It snowed. Not a fresh powdery snow, mind you. No, this is the kind that crunches like stale bread crust underfoot and clings to everything like it holds a grudge. The world is a grim wedding cake, layers of gray and white, with the occasional cow pat poking through like a raisin of doom. Still, there's work to be done. Always. Today it's fence repair. You lost another post to rot, and the neighbor's goat, Trevor, whose eyes look suspiciously intelligent, is making a daily habit of trespassing. Time to teach Trevor boundaries. You gather tools, dull hatchet, bent nails, some twine that might be older than your father, and head out. Your boots are stiff from yesterday's wetness, and every step is an awkward, crunchy protest. The wind grabs your cloak like it's trying to take it back to wherever it came from. As you work, fingers numb and awkward, you find yourself slipping into that particular rhythm of winter labor. Hit, grunt, adjust, repeat. It's meditative in a way. Like yoga, but with splinters and less inner peace. Mainstream fact: medieval peasants, especially in Northern Europe, spent large chunks of winter repairing tools, fences, and structures, tasks put off during the busier harvest months. Winter wasn't idle. It was maintenance season. And despite the biting cold, you're sort of grateful for the motion. It keeps you from freezing solid. Halfway through pounding in a new fence stake, your hand slips. You smack your knuckles. You do not curse. You mutter something that rhymes with bless and sounds angry. The goats are unimpressed. You spot your neighbor, old Willem, on the other side of the field. He waves with 2 fingers and the blank expression of someone who gave up emotions years ago. He's hauling something in a sled made from an old door. You're pretty sure it's firewood, or possibly a relative. Hard to tell from this distance. Your stomach growls. Time to head in. You're greeted by the scent of something warm, barley again, but with a hint of leek. Someone found a vegetable, or something that used to be one. You sit, scarf down your bowl, and try not to chip a tooth on the occasional stone in the grain. Your mother calls them kitchen surprises. You call them dental threats. Today is also bath day. Not for you. For your youngest sibling. Which means you're on warm water duty. You fill the giant wooden tub with snow and then wait for the kettle to boil. Takes forever. The fire wheezes like an asthmatic dragon, and the kettle sits there smugly, doing nothing. Eventually the snow melts enough. You pour in the hot water. The result? Tepid at best. Your sibling whines. You dunk him anyway. Hygiene is non-negotiable, especially when lice season overlaps with frostbite season. Which, inconveniently, is always. Fringe tidbit: some peasants used a mix of ashes and stale urine to scrub clothing during the winter months. It's gross, but the ammonia helped break down grease and odors. You try not to think about it as you scrub your tunic later with what you hope is just ashes. Later, you're sent to the village for salt. The journey isn't long, but it feels heroic. Like Frodo if the ring were a shopping list and the Eye of Sauron was just frostbite. The path is slick. Your breath freezes in your nostrils. A passing dog gives you a good luck glance and trots off, fluffier than you'll ever be. The market is half empty. Most stalls are shuttered. The fishmonger's place reeks of desperation and cod. The potter's gone. The blacksmith has a small fire going and lets you warm your hands, briefly, before gesturing at his no loitering sign, which he probably forged himself. You find the salt trader. He's grumpy. He always is. He hands you a tiny cloth pouch and charges too much, but you pay it. Salt's not just seasoning. It's food insurance. Without it, meat spoils, cheese sours, and your mother's wrath becomes an unstoppable winter force. Historians still argue whether salt prices were deliberately inflated by local lords or just a result of high transportation costs. In either case, you're overpaying. Again, like always. And yet, you cradle the pouch like it's gold. On your way back, you pass the church. Smoke drifts from its chimney. Inside, someone's lighting candles. Maybe a mass, maybe a funeral, maybe both. You don't go in. Not today. But you do nod at the carved wooden saints watching from the doorway. They're weathered, frozen, and look as tired as you. When you finally return home, your mother claps her hands, not because of your effort, but because she can finally salt the turnips. You'll take the win. That evening, as the wind picks up and the clouds gather like gossiping old women, you feel the first flakes of another storm. It settles into your bones before it even starts. So, naturally, you start prepping for it. The animals are moved inside, again. You curse Trevor under your breath. Firewood is dragged closer to the hearth. Blankets are refolded. The stew is stretched with extra water and questionable roots. It tastes like boiled anticipation. Before bed, you pee outside. You can't bring yourself to go in the bucket. It's frozen anyway. As you finish, a gust lifts the edge of your tunic and you swear the wind laughs. Inside, everyone settles down. You burrow under blankets back to back with someone, probably your cousin. Maybe a goat. Honestly, who knows anymore? The wind howls. The house creaks. But the fire holds. For now. The next morning greets you with the soft, ominous silence that only deep snow can bring. No birdsong, no rooster, just a thick hush like the whole world's holding its breath. And that's never good. You peek outside and nearly trip backward. The world has vanished under a sheet of white. Your boots disappear halfway to the ankle the moment you step out, and you're not even off the porch yet. There's snow everywhere, on the roof, in the troughs, even caked onto the goat's horn like a fancy little hat. Trevor is unimpressed as usual. There's no ignoring it. This storm means change. This isn't a flurry. It's a proper winter blockade. A freeze that rewrites schedules, ruins plans, and has everyone in the village scrambling just to keep upright. Which means today you don't farm. You don't fix. You fortify. Your first job? Shoveling a path. But of course you don't own a shovel. Not the flat, clean, ready for a Home Depot display kind. You have a warped plank tied to a stick. Is it effective? No. Is it effort? Absolutely. Your hands are numb 5 minutes in, your breath steams out in frustrated puffs, and every scoop throws up a mist of tiny vengeful snowflakes. Somewhere around the 4th trip to clear the animal path, you seriously consider digging a tunnel system and becoming the first medieval mole person. Give it a few more storms and honestly, not a bad idea. Mainstream fact: in rural medieval Europe, especially in harsher regions like Scandinavia and the Alps, homes were often half buried in earth or snow during winter to retain warmth. Some villagers even intentionally packed snow against their huts as insulation. Which gives you an idea. You abandon the shovel and grab a pitchfork. You begin stacking snow against the house instead of away from it. Your siblings laugh at first. Then they realize you're serious. And cold. Very cold. Inside, your mother nods approvingly. She remembers her own grandmother doing the same. Sometimes, the best walls are the ones nature gives you, if you just stab it in the right direction. Still, other problems arise. The well has frozen. Again. That handy bucket on a rope method? Not so handy when you're chiseling through 3 inches of surface ice with the blunt end of a cooking spoon. Eventually, you get through. The water's freezing, obviously. But you collect what you can and haul it back, sloshing and shivering. You're soaked by the time you return, and it's only breakfast. Breakfast is predictably gruel. But today's is warm. And sprinkled with crumbs of stale cheese someone found hiding under the salt barrel. You savor every bite not just because of the taste, but because of the heat. Heat is flavor now. After breakfast, the adults get serious. You're assigned to roof duty. That's right, the roof. See, snow gets heavy. And these aren't modern engineered beams with hidden supports and fancy insulation. These are logs. Old ones. Held together by wishful thinking and animal sinew. Too much snow and down it comes. You climb carefully, your fingers gripping wooden rungs nailed into the side. You reach the top, sit astride the ridge like some reluctant winter knight and begin clearing snow. Slowly. Methodically, regretfully. Fringe tidbit: some medieval homes had sloped straw-thatched roofs specifically designed to help shed snow naturally. But in poorer hamlets like yours, thatching gets patched so many times, it barely remembers its original shape. You nearly slide off once, but a strategically placed icicle to the knee reminds you to pay attention. You mutter something unfriendly at the icicle. It doesn't respond. Back down below, you're rewarded with a turn warming your hands over the hearth. Just long enough for sensation to return. Your fingers feel like overcooked turnips. Speaking of which, your mother tosses another root into the pot. Makes a sad splash. You spend the next few hours helping block drafts. Every crevice stuffed with straw or rags or whatever's handy. Someone tapes a waxed cloth over the window, which mostly just makes the inside darker. But hey, no one's freezing to death yet, so we call that a win. At one point, your grandfather starts telling stories about the Great Frost of '47. He says wolves came right up to the doors. That cows froze standing up. That babies were born with ice on their lashes. Historians still argue whether these events were embellished tales or echoes of the Little Ice Age, which genuinely caused severe winters and food shortages across Europe during the later medieval period. Either way, Grandpa's convinced a snow spirit personally kicked over his old chicken coop. And you know what? You kind of believe him. Afternoon blurs into evening. Time moves differently in snowstorms, slower, dreamier, like you're inside a snow globe that no one bothered to shake for the last few hours. You gather for supper. It's the same stew reheated. A few sad beans float like survivors on a brothy sea. But there's bread, slightly moldy but toasted against the fire to kill the green bits. And butter. Actual butter. The last of it. Your mother spreads it like gold, dividing it onto crusts with sacred precision. You chew slowly, carefully. This is the good stuff. After supper, someone brings out the singing spoon. Not an actual instrument, just a bent bit of tin used to thump the table in rhythm while the family hums a chant-like tune. It's barely a melody, more a series of droning notes designed to lull kids to sleep and remind the adults that yes, they're still stuck together. In the same room. With the same smells. You sit, wrapped in every blanket you can find, eyes half closed, the spoon's rhythm tapping gently against the table. The fire pops softly. Snowflakes kiss the window like moths in slow motion. Then the scratching starts. Not inside. Outside. Everyone freezes. Is it wind? Is it Trevor? Is it wolves? Turns out, it's just a branch. Bare, skeletal, tapping at the wall like it wants in. You exhale. So does everyone else. But for a moment, just a moment, the old stories feel close again. You settle into bed a little tighter that night. Not from fear, but from respect. This season, this storm, it's a reminder. You're not in charge out here. The cold is, and you've survived another day in its house. You wake before the sun, and this time it's not from the cold, though your breath still fogs the air and your nose is doing that attractive drip-drip thing. It's the quiet. A strange, deep quiet, like the world's been buried in cotton. And you know that silence. It means the snow has stopped. You stretch beneath your scratchy wool blanket, and every joint lets out a tiny pop of protest. You've slept in a wooden box, basically, curled like a salted sardine. But your legs still work, mostly. So up you go. You tiptoe around your sleeping siblings, accidentally kicking someone's foot and getting a groggy slap in return. Classic. Out the door, your boots sink immediately. The snow has crusted slightly overnight, forming a top layer you break through with each step. It's like walking on burnt meringue. Cold, crumbly, and disappointing. Still, the storm has passed. That's good news. Great even. Because today something wonderful happens. The village stirs. The first sound is the thunk of a shovel 2 houses over. Then a coughing fit, probably old Arnulf again. Then, faintly, someone singing a single, out-of-key line of a hymn. And just like that, the day begins. You're not the only one whose roof barely survived. People emerge blinking into the light like sleepy trolls. Some carry baskets. Some carry buckets. Everyone's bundled so thickly, you could probably bounce a spear off someone's torso and not draw blood. Not that you'd try. Well, not before breakfast. Mainstream fact. After a snowstorm, medieval communities often had communal clearing days. Everyone worked together to dig out pathways to the church, the well, or storage barns. Not out of kindness, necessarily, but because if anyone couldn't get to food or water, everyone suffered. And so begins what you jokingly call the Great Dig. Your hands are still sore from yesterday. Too bad. Your legs ache. Tough luck. You grab a rake. Yes, a rake, and begin scraping snow from the path to the well. The snow is stubborn, clumpy. It clings like guilt. You work in shifts. 20 minutes of flailing, then 10 by the fire. Then more flailing. At one point, your cousin slides past on a frozen plank like a makeshift sled, cackling. He crashes into a tree stump and disappears under a spray of powder. You help dig him out, laughing until your cheeks hurt. A fringe detail for you. In some alpine regions, medieval children used cow ribs or curved animal bones as proto-skis to glide across snow. Not exactly Olympic material, but better than face-planting every 3 feet. By midday, the paths are clearish. Enough to reach the communal bakehouse. That's where the good smells come from: yeast, ash, and warmth. It's your favorite triangle. You're not baking today, but you get to deliver firewood. It's your ticket to the warmest place in the village. You lug your bundle, nearly lose your mittens in the process, and finally step into the low, sooty chamber. Heaven. The oven is enormous, like the mouth of a dragon, all orange glow and gentle roaring. Women rotate loaves with paddles the size of your torso. You get handed a crust end as thanks, burnt on one side, soft on the other. Perfection. Back outside, the snow begins to drip. Not melt, not yet. But drip. Icicles cry fat, salty tears. Roofs shed tiny avalanches. Somewhere, someone yelps under a falling lump. Classic again. And then it happens, the hunt begins. No, not the cool nightly kind with falcons and polished dogs. The rat kind. See, storms drive animals indoors. Rats mostly. Sometimes weasels. Occasionally snakes. You don't talk about the snake year. Now that things are clearing, the village children organize what passes for pest control. It's more chaotic than effective, but effective enough. You chase a rat under the barrow cart and accidentally scare a chicken so badly it lays an egg on your foot. You're not sure whether to celebrate or apologize. You grab the egg. Swarm. Gloriously so. You pocket it like treasure. That's breakfast sorted for tomorrow, maybe? You help your uncle check the livestock again. The goat survived, but one has a limp. The cow's breath is labored, possibly from the cold or just from being old. Either way, your uncle frowns and mutters about broth. Historians still argue whether rural peasants treated animals more as family or just walking rations. Likely both. You grow attached, but the reality remains. If the cow goes, so does your winter butter. And your plow help. And your milk. And your morale, honestly. You finish the check and head toward the village commons, where a gathering has begun. Someone's hung a bundle of dried herbs from a tree branch, sign of a blessing circle. These aren't formal church ceremonies. They're in between. Somewhere in the mossy space between old pagan habits and new Christian overlays. You link hands, chant something about warmth, about sun, about health. You're not even sure what language half of it's in. But it feels right. You share a flask of honeyed water. Not wine. Not yet. But it burns your throat just enough to make your toes feel less like popsicles. As dusk nears, your mother sends you to visit the widow 2 doors down. She's old. Her thatch is thinner than yours. Her hearth burns low. You knock gently, then push open the crooked door. Inside it's dim. And yes, cold. She's curled near the embers, shawl over her head, hands wrapped around a clay pot for warmth. You pass her a basket, dried beans, some onion, and the crust end of your bread. She blinks, then smiles. "Good lad," she says softly. "Cold's less cruel when someone shares the edge." That sticks with you all the way home. Dinner is simple. More stew. Always stew. But this one has a carrot chunk the size of your thumb, and that's basically a feast. Afterward, your father brings out something wrapped in a cloth. Everyone gasps. It's an apple. Wrinkled, slightly brown, but still sweet. Saved since harvest. He slices it into impossibly thin wedges. You get one. Just one. It tastes like September. That night, as you curl up again, your feet pressed against your brother's bony legs and your back to the fire's whispering ghost, you smile. The storm is gone. And you're still here. You dig your toes into the straw mattress, pull the blanket over your head, and whisper one final thought before sleep takes you. Tomorrow we might even see the sun. You wake up to something strange, light. Actual, honest, golden morning light seeping through the cracks in the shutters. At first, your eyes don't believe it. You squint, rub, blink again. But it's real. The sun is back. There's a hush in the house, like everyone's too stunned to speak. You sit up, your wool blanket falling to your waist, and even the cold air feels a little softer. You shuffle over to the window, push open the wooden hatch, and boom, sunlight hits your face like warm bread fresh from the oven. And outside, the whole village is glowing. Snow still clings to rooftops and tree limbs, but it sparkles now, like the world's been dusted in crushed diamonds. That weird silence after snowfall is still there, but it's warmer now. Hopeful. You dress quickly, slipping into stiff boots and pulling your cloak around your shoulders. You step outside and immediately shield your eyes. The brightness bounces off the snow like an overexcited candle, and you regret not inventing sunglasses. Down the lane, you see something you haven't seen in days, people smiling. Children are already at it, throwing slushy snowballs that miss more than they hit. One girl builds a lopsided snow goat, complete with twig horns. A boy slides across the icy patch near the well, shrieking in delight before landing flat on his back. He gets up laughing. It's contagious. And here's your moment, your daily task, helping your father reinforce the thatch roof. Remember the leaks from the storm? Yeah. They're back with a vengeance, and now that the snow is melting, it's a race against the drip doom. You fetch bundles of dried straw from the stack behind the house, each one bundled last summer and blessed with a sprig of mugwort for luck. Fringe detail? In some regions, mugwort and lavender were tucked into thatch or nailed to beams to ward off evil spirits. Or more realistically, pests like mice and lice. You don't care which, so long as it smells better than damp goat. You climb the wooden ladder, each rung creaking beneath your weight. Your father's already up there, pulling away rotted thatch and laying new layers like a sleepy bird building a nest. You pass bundles to him and try not to look down. Heights aren't your thing. Neither is falling into pig pens, which happened once and haunts you still. Mainstream fact: thatching wasn't just roofing, it was a skill. A properly thatched roof could last 20 to 30 years with regular maintenance, and some medieval villages had full-time thatchers who traveled between homes, passing down techniques like folk songs. The new straw smells sweet, almost like hay and sunshine. You catch yourself grinning as the roof takes shape again. When it's done, your fingers are scratched, your cloak is speckled with dirt, and you have a smear of something, hopefully mud, on your cheek. But the roof looks tight, clean, defended. Back on solid ground, your mother calls you to fetch water. Easy now that the paths are clear. You haul the wooden bucket to the well, join the little lineup forming there. People are in good spirits. Someone even cracks a joke about turning the snow into beer. It wouldn't work, but you laugh anyway. And there's gossip. Always gossip. You hear someone might have spotted a wolf near the edge of the woods. Someone else swears they saw a ghost by the churchyard. You don't put much stock in either, but the stories add flavor to the day. Historians still argue whether peasant folklore was more rooted in pagan superstitions or adapted to fit Christian narratives. Truth is, it was probably a swirling mix of both, whatever helped explain the wind in the chimney or the creaking floor at night. On your way back with the bucket, you stop to peek at the stream. The top layer of ice has cracked, revealing slow-moving water beneath. It gurgles quietly like it's trying to tell you something. You toss in a pebble and watch ripples dance across the surface. Later, the village priest calls everyone to a short gathering, not quite a mass but more than a chat. It's part gratitude, part warning. Be thankful the storm passed, but remember another could come. Nature giveth, nature taketh, nature freezes your toes off if you're cocky. You listen politely, then wander toward the animal pens. The snow here is trampled down, mixed with mud and straw. Smells like, well, farm. You pat the goat on the nose, check the chickens, and yes, you find another egg. 2 days in a row. Miraculous. Inside, your mother's preparing something that smells amazing. Porridge sweetened with the last of the honeycomb. It's warm, gooey, and served in a clay bowl so chipped it looks like it's been through 5 winters, which it probably has. Still tastes divine. After lunch, your uncle lets you join him to check the snares in the woods. Dangerous? A bit. But he knows the trails. He carries a walking stick with a blade fastened to the end, part staff, part spear. You carry a satchel and try to keep up. The forest is quieter than usual. The snow dampens sound, and every footstep is a muffled crunch. You spot deer tracks, a rabbit trail, and even something that might be fox prints. You whisper questions, and your uncle answers in that low voice he only uses out here. You come upon a snare with a rabbit in it, small, thin, but alive. Your uncle dispatches it quickly. You look away. Even when it's necessary, it never gets easier. Still, that rabbit means food. He hands it to you, and you cradle the warm body in the satchel. Tonight you'll have meat. Fringe detail: in especially harsh winters, some peasants boiled tree bark into a kind of paste when meat and grains ran out. It was bitter, barely digestible, but it filled the belly. Rabbit is luxury by comparison. Back at home, your uncle's wife prepares the rabbit while you wash up. Your hands sting in the cold water. You dry them by the fire, watching the sparks dance like stars. Dinner is modest but hearty. Rabbit stew with bits of parsnip, a hunk of black bread, and mulled cider from a clay mug. You sip slowly, letting the warmth trickle down your chest. Outside, the sun sets in streaks of pink and orange. The snow reflects it all, making the world blush. Before bed, you step out once more just for a moment. The sky is cloudless. The stars, so many stars. You tilt your head back and just breathe. Cold air in, warm breath out. You feel tiny, and somehow that's comforting. Inside, your siblings are already asleep. You curl into your usual spot, wool blanket tucked under your chin. The roof no longer drips. The hearth still glows. The world for now is quiet. And as your eyes drift closed, you realize winter isn't over. Not by a long shot, but neither are you. You wake to the muffled thump of footsteps outside. Someone shoveling slush, maybe, or just boots splashing through thawing muck. The house smells faintly of smoke and sour cabbage, which, if you're being honest, is your home's default scent from October through March. You groan a little, stretch under your itchy blanket, and decide the best way to start this gray, mushy day is not to start it at all. But life disagrees. Your mother clatters something loudly in the corner, clay jugs maybe, and your youngest sibling begins coughing like he's trying to summon a demon. You sigh, throw off the covers, and swing your legs down into your worn leather boots. The fire's gone out, leaving the hearth ash cold. You stoke it gently, coaxing some flickering life from the coals, until smoke curls back up the chimney like a lazy snake. Warmth creeps back in. Today is maintenance day. That means boiling the bed linens, yes again, checking the thatch for leaks, again, and praying that the snow melt hasn't flooded the root cellar. Spoiler, it has. When you crack open the cellar door, you're greeted with a stink that is part mold, part despair. A few potatoes have gone squishy. One onion has actually sprouted legs. Not literally, but it's close. You haul out the worst offenders and let the rest breathe. Your father's already muttering about building a better drainage trench in the spring, which he says every year, which never happens. Mainstream historical fact. Medieval peasants typically stored root vegetables like turnips, carrots, and beets in earth cellars to keep them cool and dry. But if moisture got in, mold could spoil the entire batch in days, making the difference between survival and starvation. To distract yourself, you check the hens. One egg. It's a good day. Then it's on to the tool shed, which is really just a sagging lean-to made of reclaimed planks and faith. You sharpen the wood axe, which is so nicked it looks like someone used it to chop dragons. You oil the hinges of the barn door using a mix of fat and soot. It's gross, but it works. By midday, the skies darkened again, not for snow this time, but rain. Fat, cold drops that slap the mud like they're mad at it. You throw on a hooded cloak and help your father haul firewood under cover. Your boots squelch in the mud. Your nose runs. Your life feels like one long, slightly damp endurance trial. You duck inside, dripping, and warm your hands by the fire. Your mother hands you a slice of coarse bread with a smear of lard. It's bland, but at least it's calories. There's talk of maybe making pottage for supper if the last bit of dried herbs can be scraped from the sack. You volunteer to go check. On your way to the herb shelf, you notice a weird patch on the wall near the door, damp and soft. Not good. You press it and it sort of squishes. You're no expert, but you're 90% sure medieval walls shouldn't squish. Fringe detail. In some peasant homes, moss or animal hair was used to plug wall cracks. In extremely drafty homes, people even wove straw into wall gaps or hung tapestries made of felted wool to insulate. Basically, medieval peasant insulation was whatever didn't catch fire or smell too bad. You grab the dried herbs, mostly thyme, a few crumbled leaves of something that might be nettle, and pass them to your mother. She nods approval. You also find a shriveled apple hiding behind a jar. Skr. The afternoon is spent spinning and patching. Your mother twists rough wool into thread, your sister darns socks with a wooden mushroom-shaped tool. You try to fix a broken stool leg and only slightly fail. Outside, rain trickles down in lazy streaks. The snow's almost gone now, but the ground is a mushy graveyard of footprints, chicken scratches, and hoof prints. You spot your neighbor's donkey looking especially miserable, standing in the muck like he's contemplating early retirement. Inside again, your father takes out the bone dice for a quick game before dinner. He rolls a 7. You roll a 5. He smirks like that means he's just inherited your sheep. You remind him you have no sheep. He reminds you that means you have no bargaining power. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants had more leisure time than we assume. Some believe daily breaks, feast days, and seasonal downtime gave them more rest than modern laborers. Others point to the constant maintenance work and survival anxiety as proof of near-constant toil. The truth is probably both. Some days were long and brutal. Others, like this, were just long. By evening, the house is warm again, the stew is bubbling with mystery ingredients, and the rain has softened to a drizzle. You sit near the fire, wrapping twine around a bundle of kindling. Your sister hums a song that's mostly vowels, and someone outside yells about a pig getting loose again. After dinner, the village bell rings, not for mass, just to check in. People gather near the church for some shared news. The merchant who left before the storm has returned. With new iron nails, salted fish, and, you hold your breath, a small sack of pepper. Actual imported pepper. The whole crowd buzzes. You can't afford it, of course, but just knowing it's here somehow makes the world feel bigger. Like there's still a beyond, a future. A trade route that stretches farther than this soggy, gray village. You shuffle back home, boots heavy with mud. Inside, your mother is heating stones near the fire again. One for your feet, one for her aching back. You take the smaller one, wrap it in cloth, and slide it into bed before you crawl in after it. Fringe memory, the last time you had pepper, it was a wedding. Your cousin's. She cried the whole time, not because of love, but because of onions. The feast was just cabbage and salted pork, but someone sprinkled pepper on it, and it felt like royal cuisine. Your father leans against the doorway and says, "Rain tomorrow, maybe the next day too." You nod like you know what that means. You don't. But he always sounds so certain. The fire dims. The house creaks. The hearth sighs. You curl into the curve of your blanket, the hot stone at your feet, and try to focus not on the cold or the damp, but the fact that the worst of winter might be behind you. And even if it's not, you've made it this far. You whisper a tiny promise to yourself, so quiet you're not sure if it's in your head or out loud. You'll keep going. Your dreams are brief and blurry, mud paths that twist into forests, a chicken that talks, someone selling warm gloves for one smile and a song. You wake before dawn, breath fogging softly in the cool air of the house, and for a moment, you forget what season it is. Then the wind groans outside like a tired ox, and the chill crawling down your back reminds you, oh, right, still winter, still poor, still alive. You get up slowly, joints stiff. Your blanket has slid off your shoulders during the night, and your hands feel like bundled sticks. You rub them together and crouch by the hearth, coaxing the last bit of life from the embers. A good fire saves your fingers, a bad one wastes your morning. Once there's flame, you put on the kettle, metal, battered, older than you, and start preparing a thin barley mash. No one's up yet. This is rare. You have a few sacred moments of solitude, just you and the sound of water heating and mice scrabbling in the thatch. You stretch your legs, pull a splinter from your thumb, and sip the broth straight from the ladle. The quiet ends with your brother sneezing himself awake and immediately asking where the cat is. You shrug. The cat goes where it wants. Probably curled in someone else's chimney nook, freeloading warmth. Smart animal. Your mother's next, already tying on her headscarf. She grumbles something about checking the hens and that leaky patch above the doorway. Your father is last to rise, muttering about his dreams, which involved a cart tipping over and a monk stealing cheese. Dreams make sense here the way weather does. Sometimes. Mainstream historical fact. Many medieval peasants rose well before dawn, especially during winter, to make the most of the dim daylight hours. Morning chores wasn't just a phrase, it was survival protocol. If you didn't start early, you might not finish at all. By full morning, you've managed to patch 2 socks, refill the water jugs, and stomp your boots enough to get half the mud off. You even fold some of the firewood into neat stacks along the wall, a small act of order in a life ruled by chaos. But what you're really looking forward to, oddly enough, is the local winter gathering. Every few weeks, especially once midwinter passed, the villagers held a telling night. Just an excuse, really. A reason to huddle together in the biggest home or the church hall, light extra candles, and swap stories until the chill was forgotten. You loved it. Even the way there is exciting. You and your siblings bundle into cloaks, clutching hand-wrapped candles, and trudge along the slippery paths. Your boots slide on slush that's frozen over like icing, and your sister wipes out once, landing in a muddy puddle. You laugh until you wipe out too. The church hall is dim but welcoming. Someone's hung pine branches on the beams to freshen the air, and the smell makes you feel briefly like you've been transported to a forest. A small one, with coughing neighbors. Someone plays a reed pipe. It's awful. Then someone sings and it's slightly better. Fringe tidbit. In some rural villages, peasants created their own storytelling traditions, complete with recurring characters. Tricksters, wise old widows, lazy lords, and talking goats. These tales were passed down not just for entertainment, but to teach lessons and remember events. One real 14th century tale involves a dancing bear who outsmarts a bishop. Historians are still baffled. You take your spot on a worn wool blanket, next to a kid chewing on a turnip and an old man who smells strongly of onions. It's perfect. Someone tells a ghost story about a monk who froze in a bell tower and still rings the bells with frostbitten fingers. You shiver and huddle closer to the hearth. Later they bring out food, mostly communal stews and roasted chestnuts. Your portion is small but warm, and the act of eating together feels sacred. There's laughter, shared memories, and someone attempting a cartwheel fail. You listen quietly as the village wise woman begins a tale about the oldest winter anyone remembers, the year of 3 snows. She describes snow so deep it buried fences, froze ink in the well, and forced everyone to live in one house like hibernating badgers. Babies were born that winter and came out shivering. People knitted mittens out of dog fur. You think she's joking. You hope. Historians still argue whether communal gatherings were moments of relief or just distractions from the daily grind. Some claim they were essential bonding rituals. Others say peasants were too exhausted for merriment. But standing here, belly warm, ears full of story, it's hard to believe this wasn't necessary. Feels like medicine. When the last tale winds down and the candles flicker low, people begin drifting out. You help carry a toddler back home who's fallen asleep halfway through a story about wolves who wore boots. Your hands are cold again, but your chest feels warm. And that matters more. At home, the fire's down to coals again. You stoke it. Your siblings pile into bed in one heap. You slide in beside them, sharing the warmth, wrapped in wool and sleep. Outside, the wind picks up again, but it feels gentler, less cruel, like a sigh instead of a snarl. You stare at the ceiling until your eyes close, remembering the dancing bear, the frostbitten bell monk, the ghost wolves in boots. You wonder which tale you'll tell next winter. And now, breathe in. One last time. The fire flickers lower now, just a sleepy amber glow. Its shadows stretch long and thin across the packed earth floor, melting into the corners like ink. The wind outside brushes the walls with soft fingers. Nothing howls. Nothing threatens. The air in the room is thicker now, still warm but full of hush. You curl deeper into your blanket, letting the last bits of sound soften. Footsteps becoming whispers, the crackle of the hearth fading to memory. Your muscles begin to loosen. Your breath deepens. The rush of the day, the cold of the chores, the laughter around the stories, all of it slows now, becomes something distant, something safe. Tomorrow may bring frost or rain or another long day. But tonight you have shelter. You have warmth. You've survived. And survival here in this simple place is its own kind of triumph. Let your thoughts drift like snowflakes, landing soft, one by one. The crack in the wall doesn't creak anymore. The kettle no longer hisses. Even the cat has returned, curled in the corner, barely visible, but purring like a lullaby. So hush now. You've done enough. The dark has no teeth tonight. Let the cold stay outside. Let your breath slow. Let your dreams come, soft, strange, and warm. Good night.